A 6-year-old boy walks into a park with his brother. He never walks out. 73 years later, an old man gets a knock on his door. The FBI is standing there. They tell him something impossible. You're not who you think you are. You were kidnapped as a child. Your real family has been searching for you for 7 decades. This is the longest solved kidnapping case in American history. A case where a mother visited the police station every single week for 50 years. A case where one DNA test changed everything. I'm taking you deep into this story right now. No fluff. No wasted time. Just the truth about how one family never gave up and how science brought a stolen child home after an entire lifetime. This is Dark Pulse. Let's get into it. February 21st, 1951. West Oakland, California. A Wednesday afternoon. Kids are playing in Brush Street Park. Swings moving. Laughter everywhere. Just a normal day. 2 brothers are chasing each other across the grass. 10-year-old Roger and 6-year-old Luis Albino. Recent arrivals from Puerto Rico. The family moved to California just 1 year earlier, chasing better opportunities like thousands of other immigrant families. The boys speak mostly Spanish at home, still learning English at school. But on the playground, language doesn't matter. They're just 2 kids having fun. Luis is small for his age. Dark hair. Big smile. He looks up to his older brother like he's a superhero. And Roger takes that role seriously. He watches out for Luis. Makes sure nobody bothers him. Keeps him safe. The afternoon sun is starting to drop. Other kids are heading home for dinner. The Albino boys know they should get going too. Their mother wants them home before dark. But just a few more minutes of play. That's what they're thinking. That's when she shows up. A woman in her early 30s. Complete stranger. Wearing a bright green bandana over her hair. She walks up to them with a friendly smile and starts speaking in perfect Spanish. Roger glances up. Something in his gut tells him to be careful. But Luis, being only 6 and trusting like kids are, smiles back when she speaks their language. She feels familiar to him in that way. She asks their names. Asks how old they are. Then she makes an offer. If you come with me, I'll buy you some candy. Luis's eyes light up. The promise of candy from a nice lady speaking Spanish? He's ready to go. Roger hesitates. Who is this woman? Why is she offering them candy? Something feels off. But before Roger can say anything, the woman takes Luis by the hand. Come on, Mijo. The store is just over there. Luis jumps up, ready to follow. Roger trails behind them, not wanting to miss out on candy, but feeling more and more anxious with every step. They leave the park, start walking down the sidewalk. The woman is moving fast, holding Luis's hand tight, really tight. After a couple blocks, Roger's fear kicks in. This isn't the way to any store he knows. They're heading away from their neighborhood, further and further from home. The woman's grip on Luis's hand gets even tighter. Roger's heart is pounding now. He's only 10. He doesn't fully understand kidnapping, but he knows something is wrong. Excuse me, where are we going? The candy store should be near the park. The woman looks back. Her friendly smile is gone. It's a little farther. Just keep coming. Roger slows down. Fear is running through him. He's several steps behind now, and he sees the woman pulling Luis faster and faster. Roger makes a split-second decision. Luis, I'm going to get Mom. He turns and runs, legs pumping as fast as they can. He yells his brother's name a couple times as he sprints away. But Luis and the woman have already turned a corner. They're gone. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. This story gets even more unbelievable. Roger bursts through the front door minutes later, gasping for breath, shouting in Spanish and broken English to his mother. Antonia Albino, 33 years old, mother of 6 children. She's been cleaning the house, expecting her boys home any minute. When Roger comes racing in, terrified and crying, she knows instantly something horrible has happened. He's babbling the story between sobs. A lady at the park took Luis, promised candy. They walked away. Luis is gone. At first, Antonia struggles to understand. Her English is limited. Roger is speaking so fast, but she catches enough words. Luis, woman, candy, gone. Her baby boy has been taken. Antonia doesn't waste a single second. Still wearing her apron, she runs out the door with Roger and races toward the park, screaming Luis's name at the top of her lungs. Neighbors turn their heads. People step outside, alarmed by this frantic mother running down the street. They reach the park. Empty swings. Deserted sandbox. No sign of Luis. No sign of the woman in the green bandana. Antonia feels like she can't breathe, but she refuses to fall apart. She has to find her son. She grabs strangers by the arms. Have you seen my little boy? Dark hair? Small. A teenage girl on a bench says she saw a woman walking away with a small boy earlier, but she thought it was his mother. That confirmation sends ice through Antonia's body. A stranger has her child. Antonia lets out a sound that people will never forget. A primal scream of despair that echoes across the park. Roger stands there crying, feeling helpless and guilty. She took Luis, Mama. I'm sorry. She took him. Night falls on Oakland. What started as a sunny afternoon has become every parent's worst nightmare. Through sobs and broken English, Antonia gets someone to call the police. Soon, patrol cars arrive at the Albino home. Red and blue lights flashing everywhere. The officers face an immediate problem. Antonia speaks mostly Spanish. Very little English. Oakland police in 1951 don't have many Spanish-speaking officers. Roger tries to translate. He explains what happened. A woman with a bandana promised candy and took his brother. But Roger is a scared 10-year-old struggling to communicate. The police ask him the same questions over and over. Who was this woman? Did you know her? What did she say exactly? Roger describes her through tears. Green thing on her head. Spoke Spanish. Said she'd buy candy. He didn't recognize her. She was a stranger. One officer quietly wonders if Roger made up a story to cover an accident. Stranger kidnappings are incredibly rare in those days. Almost unheard of. But another officer sees family photos on the wall, including one of 6-year-old Luis with a gap-toothed smile. This is a real child. Now missing. Whether they believe the kidnapping story or not, a little boy is gone. They have to respond. Within hours, Oakland police launch a citywide search. They start at the park, looking for clues. A dropped toy. Footprints. Any witness who saw where the woman went. They knock on doors through the neighborhood. Ask if anyone saw a young boy being led away. Neighbors join in. Small search parties with flashlights canvass the streets and alleys. As evening gets darker, Antonia can barely stand. She's clutching her rosary in one hand and a photo of Luis in the other, moving between shock and panic. Every time she hears footsteps outside, she rushes to the door, hoping someone is bringing her son back. But it's always just another neighbor or officer with no news. By midnight, this has become more than a routine missing child call. The description of the possible kidnapper goes out to all local law enforcement. A woman in her 30s, Spanish-speaking, wearing a bandana. Oakland police coordinate with nearby departments. They're not taking chances. Early the next morning, soldiers from a nearby army base volunteer to help. Dozens of military personnel join police and civilians to search a 9-block area around the park. They check backyards, sheds, alleys, anywhere a child might be hidden. In 1951, there's no 911 system, no Amber Alert. But local radio stations pick up the story. Missing 6-year-old boy in West Oakland. Possible kidnapping. Last seen with a woman wearing a green bandana. Tips start coming in. Someone at a bus stop thinks they saw a woman with a crying boy. Another person reports hearing a child shout near the railroad. Every tip gets followed up. None lead anywhere. It's like the woman and Luis vanished into thin air. Police consider all possibilities. What if Luis wandered off and fell into the water? The park isn't far from San Francisco Bay. The Coast Guard gets called in. Boats patrol the bay. Divers check the shallow water around the docks. It's torture for Antonia. Hearing they're searching the water means police think her son might be dead in the bay. No. My son is alive. She insists to anyone who will listen. He was taken. The water search turns up nothing. No trace of Luis. On one hand, relief. He wasn't found drowned. On the other hand, deeper mystery. If he didn't fall in the bay, where is he? 48 hours pass. The newspapers pick up the story. The Oakland Tribune prints an article with a grainy photo of Luis and Roger together. The community is terrified. Parents hold their children closer. But despite media attention and intense searching, no solid leads emerge. Police question Roger repeatedly, pressing him for every detail. Each time, Roger tells the same story. Woman came up, spoke Spanish, wore bandana, promised candy, led Luis away. Yes, he followed at first. No, he didn't recognize her. No, he never saw a car. She was walking. Roger feels guilty and traumatized. Investigators aren't mean to him, but they're persistent. His story is the only eyewitness account they have. Meanwhile, Antonia is living every second in agony. She barely eats or sleeps, spends her time at the police station or out searching until exhaustion forces her to rest. For the first few weeks, Antonia shows up at the police station every single morning. Officers see this heartbroken mother walk in as soon as doors open, hoping for news. Every day, the answer is the same. No news, ma'am. Nothing yet. Antonia goes home crying, only to return the next day and ask again. Eventually, the massive search gets scaled back. Soldiers return to base. Coast Guard resumes normal patrols. Volunteers go back to their lives. A small group of detectives keeps investigating. But without leads, Luis's case becomes what everyone dreads. A cold case. Weeks turn into months. Missing posters fade and tear. Tips dry up. The woman with the bandana remains a ghost. In 1951, forensic science is basic. No security cameras. No DNA testing. Not even an FBI database for missing children. Luis's disappearance seems like a tragedy with no answers. For the Albino family, it's devastating. But Antonia never gives up hope. Every single day, she prays for her boy, lights candles, pleads with God to keep Luis safe until he can be found. She refuses to believe he's dead. Powerful maternal instinct tells her he's alive somewhere. Someone is caring for him. Maybe that thought is what keeps her going. The idea that Luis is in a home somewhere, growing up, even if it's without her. Antonia continues visiting the police station. Nearly every morning at first. She carries a small flyer with Luis's photo that she hands to any official who will look. Officers at missing persons come to expect her. Some days, she brings one of Luis's siblings or a neighbor to help translate. You can imagine how heartbreaking those encounters are. A mother with red eyes searching their faces for any hint of news. Officers slowly shaking their heads in apology. After a year, Antonia settles into visiting once a week. Every week she shows up and asks in Spanish, "Any news of my son?" Every week, the same gentle headshake. Oakland police don't completely forget. Occasionally, a new detective reviews old files. Or a child matching Luis's description turns up out of state, and they investigate. Always ending in disappointment. As the 1950s become the 60s, the world changes around the Albino family. Older children grow up, start their own lives and families. Roger carries guilt and trauma with him. In quiet moments, he replays that day. What if he hadn't let Luis go? What if he'd screamed sooner? What if he'd followed further? These questions haunt him. He keeps hoping to find his little brother. Around 1966, hope flickers. Luis would be 21 that year. An adult. If he's alive, he might have to register for the draft as Vietnam War ramps up. The family jumps on this idea. Maybe government records will show a 21-year-old man with Luis's name or birthday. They petition authorities. Search public records. Some family members even travel to Puerto Rico, thinking maybe the kidnapper took Luis there since she spoke Spanish. For a few months, energy renews. Roger and siblings go on trips, asking questions, showing photos, chasing rumors. Every lead turns into a dead end. No sign of Luis in military records. Puerto Rico trips come up empty. The disappointment crushes them. But Antonia still doesn't surrender. By the late 60s and 70s, Antonia's weekly visits become monthly. She ages visibly. Hair grays. Wrinkles deepen. But Oakland detectives still recognize her. By the 80s, when Antonia comes in yearly, she barely needs to speak. The desk sergeant sees her and simply lowers his eyes. "No news, Mrs. Albino." She nods, sheds a tear, leaves quietly. Inside her wallet, Antonia keeps a worn newspaper clipping from 1951 reporting Luis's kidnapping. She carries it everywhere. She also keeps a portrait of 6-year-old Luis on her wall. Every year on the anniversary, she puts a palm frond around it. To others, it might seem obsessive. But for Antonia, this is how she keeps her boy alive in her heart. Time is cruel. By the year 2000, 5 decades have passed. Antonia is in her late 80s. Many of Luis's siblings have grandchildren. The family has grown so much. Yet one piece has always been missing. At family gatherings, they reminisce. And they always talk about Luisito. Nieces and nephews who never met him feel like they know him because the story gets told so many times. He's the family legend. The boy who disappeared. Over the years, some relatives privately assume Luis must have died long ago. But nobody says that to Antonia. They respect her belief that Luis is alive somewhere. In 2005, at 92 years old, Antonia Albino passes away. Gentle death in her sleep after a long life of hardship and love. In her final years, even as memory slips, she still asks occasionally, "Where is Luis?" She never stops waiting for him to walk through the door. Her funeral is packed with surviving children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. As they celebrate her life, they acknowledge the sorrow she carried to her grave. She never found out what happened to her little boy. A framed photo of 6-year-old Luis sits on top of her coffin, a tribute to Antonia's hope. It seems any chance of discovering Luis's fate died with Antonia. The case is 54 years cold by 2005. But the story doesn't end here. Tap that like button and drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Unknown to his family, Luis was alive through all those years, living a parallel life, completely unaware of the drama that defined his childhood. The miracle Antonia prayed for was still possible, and it would come through DNA and a new generation's determination. While the Albino family searched and prayed, what was happening to Luis? Picture 6-year-old Luis that day in 1951, being pulled along by the woman after Roger ran off. Based on what was uncovered later, some details are clear. The woman took Luis onto an airplane. Shocking twist. Air travel in 1951 isn't common like today. But commercial flights exist and aren't heavily documented. A child can be brought on a plane without identification. Maybe she told airline staff Luis was her son and he was just shy. If Luis cried for his mother, maybe she comforted or threatened him into silence. Imagine that moment. A little boy who's never been on a plane, pressed against the window as California disappears below, carrying him further from home. They fly across the country, arrive somewhere on the East Coast. Exact location stays undisclosed, but it's far from Oakland in every way. Here, Luis's memory of his old life starts to blur. If he speaks mostly Spanish at 6, and suddenly he's in an English-speaking environment, it adds to his confusion. We know Luis ends up with a couple who raises him as their own son. How? Was the woman working for this couple? Was she a broker? Or did they plan the kidnapping themselves? That stays a mystery. But Luis finds himself in a new home with new parents. These people take in the stolen boy and give him a new life. They probably give him a different name. Luis likely grows up under a completely new identity. That's why he never shows up in searches under Luis Albino. He might have been told, "You're our child." Or maybe, "You're adopted and your birth parents died." We know one thing. Luis believes these are his real parents. He has no idea he was kidnapped. They treat him as their son. He has no clue about the crime. Wonder if little Luis remembers his early years at all. Does he recall Puerto Rico where he was born? Does he remember his mother's face? Roger's laugh? At 6, kids have solid memories. But those fade without reinforcement, especially with trauma and time. Maybe for a while he cries for his mama. But if he does, his new caretakers ignore those pleas. Over time, young minds adapt to survive. A child accepts new reality, especially if treated kindly. We don't know if his kidnappers are abusive or loving. It seems they raise him well enough for him to thrive as an adult. So Luis grows up on the East Coast. The only life he knows. Goes to school, makes friends, learns fluent English, probably loses his Spanish. He celebrates birthdays not knowing his real family is praying for him on that same day. Every milestone happens in this parallel world where he's someone else's son. As the 60s arrive, Luis is a teenager. Vietnam War looms. Like many young men, Luis joins the United States Marine Corps. Maybe patriotism. Maybe opportunity. Here's the cruel part. The Albino family is searching military records for his name. But he's not Luis Albino in the Marines. He's whoever his new identity says. They suspect he might join military. And he does. Serves 2 tours in Vietnam as a Marine. All the while, they have no idea. Neither does he. He's fighting half a world away from a family longing to find him. After Vietnam, Luis returns as a veteran, builds a life, becomes a firefighter. Career of courage and service. This is a man who runs toward danger to help others, not knowing that once, danger came for him as a stranger at a park. By the 70s or 80s, Luis settles down, marries, starts a family. Children are born. He becomes a father, then grandfather. These children and grandchildren grow up loving a kind, brave man they know as dad or grandpa. completely unaware of the twist of fate in his background. Luis's life looks ordinary, even exceptional. Military veteran, firefighter, family man. No cloud of mystery around him. He likely never searches for biological family because he doesn't know he's missing one or believes there's nobody to find. Through all these years, he's living with a family, just not the one he was born into. Bittersweet to think that while Antonia prays daily for her son, across the country Luis is indeed alive and well. By 2020, Luis is about 74 or 75, likely retired after decades of firefighting, maybe enjoying quiet life, garden, grandkids, veteran stories. He's completely unaware that in California, a large family still speaks his name and wonders what became of him. Luis has lived a full life, but the chapter about to open will change everything he knows. And it starts with someone he's never met taking a DNA test for fun. Year 2020. World grappling with pandemic. People isolated at home. Many turn to hobbies like genealogy to connect with family history. Alida Aliquin, 63 years old, living in Bay Area, always curious about her ancestry. Alida is Antonia's granddaughter, daughter of one of Luis's siblings. All her life, she's heard the family legend of Uncle Luis who went missing as a boy. She grew up with that faded newspaper clipping and grandmother's stories. Even though she wasn't born when it happened, Luis's disappearance marked the family across generations. Now, with grandmother and that generation gone, the tale of Uncle Luis seems like a mystery that will never be solved. At 63, Alida decides to take an online ancestry DNA test. Mail and saliva sample, get back genetic details and relative matches. She's not trying to solve the family mystery. She does it just for fun, maybe curious about ancestry, maybe hoping to connect with distant cousins. These tests are popular now, reveal all sorts of surprises. People discover unknown siblings, biological parents, heritage stories. For Alida, maybe there's a tiny hope. What if something comes up about Uncle Luis? But after nearly 70 years, feels impossible. She sends the test and waits. When Alida gets her results online, she scrolls through expecting ethnic percentages. Maybe second or third cousins who also tested. But her eyes go wide. She sees something completely unexpected. Close family match with an unknown man. The DNA site shows about 22% shared DNA with this person. That percentage is huge. In genetic genealogy, 25% typically means first-degree relative, grandparent, grandchild, half-sibling, aunt or uncle. 22% is just below that. Well within range for an uncle. Alida's heart skips. Could this be him? Could this be Uncle Luis? She double-checks. The match is a man around the right age. She doesn't recognize the name or username. This man isn't in her known family tree, and the percentage is way too high for a random distant cousin. Realization hits. The only logical person this could be is her long-lost Uncle Luis. Alida's hands shake as she processes this. After nearly 7 decades, Luis is not only alive, but also unknowingly took a DNA test that ended up in the same database. Excited and in disbelief, Alida writes a message through the DNA service to this mystery man. Hello, I see we have a significant DNA match. I'm trying to learn more about my family. Do you know of any relatives from Puerto Rico, or anyone who was adopted? Please contact me. She hits send and waits. Days pass, then weeks. No response. Alida checks regularly. Nothing. The man might not even use the website actively. Some people mail in a test, glance at results, never log in again. Alida is left in frustrating silence. Is this her missing uncle? How can she reach him? Eventually, life distractions pull her away. The world in 2020 is chaotic with pandemic. Lack of response makes her shelve the idea. For long years slip by, but the unanswered question about that DNA match never fully leaves Alida's mind. Lingers quietly like a puzzle piece waiting to fit. Early 2024. A lot has changed since that first DNA test. By now, Alida has heard more stories of genetic genealogy, solving mysteries. News of cold cases cracked by DNA. Family reunions through databases. Maybe she watches a documentary that sparks a thought. What about that match I found? One evening, Alida sits down determined to solve the family mystery her grandmother died never knowing. This time, Alida gets help. Her own daughters, Luis's great-nieces, now adults, join the mission. Multi-generational effort. They gather around a computer, digging for information on the name attached to that DNA match. With internet detective work, they find a person who could be him. Through public records, people finder sites, maybe social media. If the man used his real name or traceable username, they might uncover addresses, phone numbers, clues. Alida and daughters decide to check the library for old newspapers. They realize to convince authorities, they need solid evidence tying this unknown man to the boy who vanished in 1951. Alida visits Oakland Public Library where archives of old Oakland Tribune sit on microfilm. She threads the reel and wins back time to 1951, scanning pages until she finds articles about her uncle's kidnapping. On grainy pages, she sees a photograph of young Roger and Luis, taken after the kidnapping. Picture used in paper to help find the boy. Roger, 10. Luis, 6. Frozen in time. Black and white. Two innocent faces from another era. Alida stares at Luis's face in that photo, memorizing every feature. If her hunch is right, that little boy grew up to be the man on the other end of that DNA test. She takes whatever information she's found about the mystery man. Maybe a name. Maybe even a picture on internet. Profile from genealogy forum. Maybe his name tied to news story about retired firefighters. Alida compares that modern image to the childhood photo of Luis. Might seem hard connecting a 6-year-old face to a 70-something-year-old face, but family resemblances endure. Maybe she notices the older man's eyes or nose shape strongly resemble her relatives. Maybe he has the albino family smile. Her conviction solidifies. This has to be him. Armed with Tribune clippings, photos, and DNA results, Alida approaches Oakland Police Department. Been almost 73 years since the original crime. Imagine the officer's shock when this determined woman walks in and says, "I have information on a missing person case from 1951. She provides details. Her name, relation to Luis Albino. The story passed down. And now this DNA match indicating he might be alive on East Coast. Might sound crazy at first, but by 2024, police know the power of DNA and genealogy. They know stranger things have happened. Oakland Police Missing Persons Unit listens to Alida. On March 18, 2024, Alida formally presents her findings to investigators. She essentially says, "I think my uncle Luis, who was kidnapped as a child in 1951, is alive and living under another identity. And I believe I've found him." One of the most extraordinary claims they've heard. But the evidence she brings is compelling. DNA match percentage. Old newspaper photo. Oakland Police Department reopens the missing person case of Luis Armando Albino. Case cold for over 7 decades. Detectives taking this on must feel surge of excitement. Possibility of cracking one of the oldest mysteries on record. Police don't work alone. They get help from FBI and California Department of Justice. FBI has jurisdiction over kidnapping cases crossing state lines. Even though this is long past, technically remains unsolved. These agencies bring resources and expertise far beyond what existed in 1951. Investigators verify Alida's evidence. Likely contact DNA testing company for additional info on that match if available. Perhaps they use public records and databases to narrow down who this man could be. Imagine the day they find a record. Man about 79 years old. Lives on East Coast. With cautious hope, FBI agents reach out. This part is delicate. How do you tell someone news that destroys everything they know about themselves? One day, the man who is Luis, now late 70s, gets a knock on his door. Or maybe phone call. It's FBI. Imagine him puzzled. What business could FBI have with a law-abiding retired firefighter? They might ask, "Did you ever take a DNA test?" Maybe he says yes, did one a while back, but thought nothing of it. They gently explain they have reason to believe he might be connected to very old missing child case. He's probably confused, maybe in disbelief. "You think I'm a missing person? I've lived here my whole life. You must have wrong guy." Investigators explain further. In 1951, 6-year-old boy named Luis Albino was kidnapped from park in Oakland. They have strong evidence suggesting he is that boy. Put yourself in his position. The mental shock of hearing you might be someone who was kidnapped as a child 73 years ago. If he had any idea he was adopted, his thoughts race. Could that story I was told about my birth not be true? If he had no idea, even more jarring. Maybe he laughs it off at first. But agents present something convincing. Maybe show him copy of that 1951 newspaper with photo of him as boy. He looks at image of little child who vanished. Maybe long-buried memory stirs. Or maybe just the shock of seeing his own 6-year-old face he barely recalls. They ask for his cooperation to confirm via DNA. He likely agrees. Maybe still thinks this is surreal, but what's the harm in a test? Simple cheek swab taken. They already have DNA from one of his siblings still alive. DNA analysis done. Conclusively proves he is indeed biological son of Antonia Albino, brother to Roger and the others. In other words, he is Luis Armando Albino. What a moment when results come in. For investigators, triumph and shock. They found a person who was 6-year-old missing child and is today a living senior citizen. For Alida and family back in California, almost like hearing someone found a ghost alive. On June 20th, 2024, Alida gets the call she's been waiting for. Investigators inform her and her mother, Luis's sister, that Luis has been found alive. Alida later says she and her mother held composure during briefing. But once officials left, they broke down crying, gripping each other's hands. "We found him. We found him." Moment she describes as pure joy, almost miraculous fulfillment of long-held hope. Imagine the preparations and emotions in next few days. They have name and contact for Luis. But he's processing this news too. Did he immediately agree to meet birth family? From all accounts, yes. Open. Even grateful. Maybe in that short time between finding out and meeting them, he has to process 73 years of life built on one story with this new reality. Might feel shock, curiosity, maybe anger toward those who took him, confusion about what to call himself. But above all, strange excitement. He has blood relatives he never knew, and they've been looking for him for decades. Days after confirmation, arrangements made for reunion. On June 24th, 2024, plane lands in Oakland. Full circle since decades ago, plane took him away from Oakland. Luis, now about 79, steps off, possibly with one or more of his children for support. What's going through his mind as he sees California? Might be first time back since 1951. At private location, maybe Alida's home or another family member's house in Oakland, relatives gather, buzzing with excitement and nerves. Many people there. Siblings, nieces, nephews, their kids. Roger, now 83, definitely waiting. Alida there, woman who cracked the case. Her mother, Luis's sister, about 86, heart pounding at thought of meeting baby brother she never thought she'd see again. Door opens. Luis walks in. Alida sees the man she only knew from old photo and that one computer match. She describes what happened. He walked up to her, immediately gave her a hug, and said, "Thank you for finding me." Then kissed her cheek. Simple statement, but holds world of meaning. Luis in that moment understands he was lost. Someone cared enough to find him and bring him home. He's expressing gratitude as if she rescued him. Though he wasn't in danger, being found reconnected him with identity and heritage he never knew was missing. Tears flow as Alida introduces him to other relatives. Maybe they have photo albums. Pictures of mother he barely remembers. Pictures of father. Grandparents. Stories about siblings growing up. Did he know he was one of 6 originally? Might be stunned to find out how large his birth family is. Not long after this meeting in Oakland, next day they travel to meet Roger, brother whose quick thinking back in 1951 set this saga in motion, who carried burden of that day for so long. Roger living in Stanislaus County, California, couple hours from Oakland in Central Valley. Alida drives Luis and her mother to Roger's home. Imagine the quiet car ride. Maybe pointing out California landmarks to Luis. Or maybe everyone quiet, emotionally preparing for biggest reunion of all. Roger knows his brother is alive and coming. What's it like waiting for brother you lost at age 10 when you're old man? When they arrive, Alida helps her uncle out of car. They approach door. Maybe Roger comes out onto porch with slow steps. There they are. 2 brothers. Separated as children. Now both old men. Face to face. Roger looks into Luis's eyes. Maybe even after all these years, sees little brother he once chased around park. Luis sees elderly man with tears in eyes. Senses connection. Familiarity around eyes or smile that mirrors his own. They close distance and embrace tight. Observers describe it as really long, tight hug. Kind where neither wants to be first to let go. In that hug, decades of pain and questions answered without word. Roger likely whispers childhood nickname or just repeats, "I can't believe it." Or maybe they don't speak at first. Just hold on and cry. They sit together, arm in arm, and talk for hours. So much to say. Roger shares details of what he remembers about that day. Luis can only piece together maybe a feeling or two if he recalls anything. They talk about lives they've lived. Roger shares about family. Who married? Who had children? How their mother never stopped looking. Emotional to hear his mother loved him so much and believed he was alive until dying day. Luis feels sadness learning she passed in 2005 and he didn't get to see her. But comforted she never gave up. They compare notes on military service since both brothers served their country. Maybe even in Vietnam around overlapping times without knowing. They talk careers. Roger hears Luis was firefighter. They fill each other in on 73 years of life in as much detail as time allows. For Roger, this reunion fulfills lifetime of guilt and sorrow. Any notion he failed his little brother wiped away. Brother is alive. Survived. Is okay. Relief and joy must be immense. For Luis, gift he didn't even know he wanted or needed. Chance to connect with origins. Know who he was and where he came from. Many adopted people speak of sense of completeness when finding biological family, even if they had wonderful adoptive life. For Luis, add shock he hadn't been given up, but actually stolen. And that family always wanted him. That knowledge can be healing. Validating he was loved and missed deeply. Over following days or weeks, Luis meets other siblings, if any still living, and numerous nieces, nephews, their children. Big family gathering where entire clan welcomes him home. They share traditional Puerto Rican foods. Maybe someone cooks arroz con gandules or other favorites Luis might find oddly familiar or entirely new. They show family heirlooms. Small stash of memories Antonia kept. Maybe she left notes or items belonging to Luis as child. Happy chaos of reunion. Also overwhelming. Imagine at nearly 80 being plunged into huge new family. But reports say Luis handled it with grace and happiness. Even spent extended visit in July 2024 in California, staying longer to bond with rediscovered family. Time, however, not completely on their side. Shortly after reunion, in August 2024, Roger passed away. Maybe his health was fragile, and he held on through will to see brother again. His passing bittersweet. Deeply sad for Luis and family. But comfort knowing Roger's lifelong wish granted. He got to hug his brother and know he was safe. When Roger left this world, did so with peace in heart, instead of question mark that hung over him 73 years. In sense, as if Roger could finally let go, having seen miracle happen. As for Luis, he returned to home on East Coast after that visit. But now, with open lines to West Coast family, suddenly had expanded family. Said his life from then on would include both family he knew, his children and grandchildren, and family he was born into. Kidnapping of Luis Albino now closed missing person case, but open investigation as crime. Oakland police and FBI officially consider kidnapping itself active, though very cold, case. They have one burning question. Who was woman in bandana? Why did she do it? After all this time, question stays unanswered. Luis, having been only 6 and then living completely different life, doesn't have answers. Didn't even know he was kidnapped, so has no memory to offer. Woman in green bandana was described by Roger as being in her 30s in 1951, which means if by slim chance she's alive today, she'd be over 100. Far more likely, she went to grave without facing justice or revealing deeds. Could have been anyone. Neighbor with bad intent. Member of trafficking ring. Or as many suspect, someone who took child to hand him to couple wanting a child. That theory seems likely given Luis ended up in stable family environment. Might have been black market adoption scenario. Sadly not unheard of in mid-20th century when adoption rules were loose. No evidence Luis's case connected to any larger plan, but pattern fits. Stranger takes child and delivers to new parents far away. Adoptive parents who raised Luis are another mystery. Did they know he was kidnapped? Or were they told child was abandoned or orphan needing home? If they were criminals, would cast whole upbringing in dark light. But if they were unsuspecting and truly thought they lawfully adopted him, though likely without proper papers, then real villain solely the kidnapper. Unfortunately, by time Luis and law enforcement learned truth, those who raised him had already passed away. No chance to question them or learn their side. Haunting to think somewhere in old Oakland police files, maybe composite sketch or brief description of suspect. Woman, 30s, bandana, Spanish speaking. That description never matched anyone then. Now unlikely to ever match definitively to real name. Though criminal side stays unsolved, triumph of this story is victim found alive. In world of missing persons, that's rare and precious outcome. Luis's case stands as one of longest-running missing child cases where child found alive in U.S. history. Nothing short of amazing. One might ask, how did Luis feel learning he was kidnapped? One thing to meet new family. Another to understand people you trusted as parents maybe deceived you. From what little said publicly, Luis seemed to handle it with grace. Expressed gratitude for being found. Maybe in his mind, at nearly 80, had maturity to understand nothing could change past. Didn't seem to have publicly known bitterness. If adoptive parents treated him well, maybe he can forgive them or at least not dwell on that betrayal. Or maybe he simply separates it. He has two lives. One given to him. One reunited with him. For his children and grandchildren, learning dad, grandpa is actually someone else by birth must have been shocked too. But likely they embraced it because meant gaining more family and seeing him happy to know his roots. As for Alida, niece who didn't give up, she's been called hero of family. Her intuition and persistence cracked the case. Oakland police publicly acknowledged Alida's efforts were crucial, and that outcome of this story is what they strive for. Indeed, law enforcement often sees heartbreak of cold cases never solved. Having 73-year-old missing person case, close with joyful family reunion, is beyond rare. Kind of result detectives dream of. Albino family story teaches us never lose hope. Antonia didn't live to see the day, but her hope was proven right. Somewhere she's smiling, knowing her faith in son's survival was true. Family's persistence combined with modern technology made impossible possible. Also highlights incredible power of genetic genealogy. Who could have guessed in 1951 that key to finding Luis would not be witness or clue in file, but rather few cells from cheek swab and vast database comparing DNA markers. This is truly 21st century solution to mid-20th century mystery. DNA doesn't forget. Carries truth of who we are across generations, just waiting for someone to read it. As more people put DNA in databases, we can expect more miraculous reunions and also resolution of crimes long unsolved. Case of Luis Armando Albino stays technically open in terms of finding perpetrator. But realistically, justice in legal sense might never be served. Instead, justice took more poetic form. Lost boy returned to family, showing love and determination can outlast even longest silences. In 2024, Oakland police officially closed missing person aspect of Luis's case. They no longer wonder if he's out there. They know he's home. However, they kept kidnapping case active, meaning if any evidence or leads about kidnapper or accomplices ever surface, maybe through historical records or someone's deathbed confession, they would investigate. But every passing day makes that less likely. In end, some mysteries of this story will stay forever. Yet story of Luis Albino doesn't feel incomplete, has beginning shrouded in fear, long middle of unanswered prayers, an ending filled with warmth, tears, and hugs, ending Antonia dreamed of, one Roger waited lifetime for, and one Luis never expected. 73 years is unbelievably long time to be missing. But as this incredible true story proves, never too late for miracle. Luis Armando Albino's journey home was overdue by lifetime, but it arrived at last. His story will go down in history as testament to family's unwavering hope and remarkable science that finally reunited them. Thank you for watching this on Dark Pulse. If this story moved you, smash that like button, drop a comment, and let me know what you think. And subscribe to Dark Pulse so you never miss another case like this. We'll keep bringing you stories of justice, hope, and resolution. Because as we learned today, no cold case is ever truly closed until truth is found.